Well, all right. Welcome back to As It Should Be. Paul Bertolino here, and well, I'm decided to start a new series, a new solo series. Yeah, I don't know how often I'll do them, but whenever I always do this where I start a new series and then I'll make one video, and then a year goes by and I haven't made a second one. Hopefully that won't be the case with this. I don't think it will be, but this is the first episode in a new series. I guess it'll be called Autographed Album. I don't know what it is. Basically, it's about autographed records. I have a lot of albums that are autographed in one capacity. In one capacity or another. One person, several people, fully, whatever. But I have a lot of records that have autographs, and I thought it would be kind of fun to do a series where on each episode I grab 5 of them and show the record and kind of give the story behind it. Maybe a little bit about my history with the record, but also about the story of how I obtained the autograph. Yeah. I mean, there's some that don't really have very interesting stories. Some of them are just a matter of waiting in line at an in-store to get signed. But, some of these actually have little stories that go behind them. And, I think it'll just be fun to show them. And I don't know, whatever. It's just fun videos. All these are fun videos, but yeah, this is really just a fun video to show this stuff off, really, I guess, So why don't I just get right into it? I have 5 albums that I've chosen for this first episode, and my first record that I've chosen is Spirit of '67 by Paul Revere and the Raiders. Yes. Now, as you can see, it is autographed by Paul Revere and Mark Lindsay. Now, I got this record, this very copy of this record, probably in the late 80s or early 90s, maybe? Probably late 80s, I guess, I don't know. But I was really, really heavily, I went through a heavy Paul Revere and the Raiders phase in the late 80s and early 90s, and kind of around that time, Mark Lindsay had a fan club called Spreading the News, and I kind of signed up for that, where you get newsletters and stuff, and he was recording a new album at the time, and I was just trying to kind of keep up with what he was doing. And so I also kind of thought hopefully I could get an autograph from him through that, and that didn't ever end up happening, but not through the Spreading the News fan club. But kind of around that time, though, Paul Revere and the Raiders were often playing at fairs. They were, anybody knows, basically throughout the 80s and the 90s and beyond, Paul Revere and the Raiders was a fair attraction. And so there was this day when there was this day, like one summer, I don't even remember what year it was, but Paul Revere and the Raiders were playing, and I thought, I'm just going to go to this fair, go see Paul Revere and the Raiders. I could probably get a signature from Paul Revere on these records, because it was the early 90s, and everything wasn't so corporate. You could easily go to whatever event and usually get autographs, and people weren't asking you to pay. You didn't have to pay to meet people. You didn't have to pay for autographs. Excuse me. So yeah, I went to this fair, saw Paul Revere and the Raiders, or Paul Revere and the Fake Raiders, and got Paul Revere to sign this album, and 2 more. I got him to sign Revolution, and probably my favorite Raiders album, Collage. Yeah, I got Paul Revere on that, and I just got those 3 albums signed, and just thought, hopefully at some point I'll be able to get Mark Lindsay, or hell, maybe Fang or Smitty, or who knows. There were some near misses. There was a time a few years later, around the early 2000s, when I was in a band, and somebody was going to put up a show, or put together a show where my band was going to open for Mark Lindsay. That didn't ever happen, but yeah, I was going to, of course, come to that show with my records and have Mark Lindsay sign them. That show didn't happen. And then, years later, maybe about 10 years ago, there's a thing here in Manhattan called Loser's Lounge. And I forget how long they do. I don't think they do it once a month. They do it once every couple months or something. And it's these cover shows, themed cover shows, where they'll do, all Steely Dan covers one show, or all whatever, Doobie Brothers, whatever. And I was singing in one of these shows, and you hang out backstage. The backstage area is just full of people, and people just taking pictures and eating and drinking, whatever. And then the night's over, I'm leaving, and Crystal, Crystal from the Singles of the Year shows or episodes, she was also in the show, and she mentioned casually that Mark Lindsay had been there. I didn't know, I didn't see him, nobody brought it to my attention while I was there, and I was like, Mark Lindsay was there? Yes, Mark Lindsay was there because he's friends with our friend Mike Fornatel, who's in Loser's Lounge. And Mark Lindsay was in town, and he came to the show to see Mike. But he was backstage, and I didn't realize, I may have been standing right next to him and not realized it. But, I didn't have my Paul Revere and the Raiders record, so I guess it doesn't matter that much. So, basically, that was another fail, didn't meet Mark Lindsay. Well, fast forward to, 2013, Halloween 2013. Mark Lindsay was playing a show, Cave Stomp, which was being held at Bowery Electric on Halloween 2013. Mike Fornatel was playing guitar, because Mike Fornatel and Mark Lindsay, they're legitimately friends. When Mark comes in to stay in town, he stays with Mike. So I went to the show, and I brought my records. And the Bowery Electric is a pretty small club, and there's no security there. Right to the left of the stage, there's a stairway that goes right up to the green room. Any idiot can walk up those stairs and walk right in there, which Mark Lindsay was not very happy about, because people were going up there left and right and bugging him, and he was not happy about it. But I came up there with all three of my records, and I came up to him and asked him if he would sign the records, and he was not in the best of moods. And he looked and saw that I had three records, and he goes, I can't sign all these. And then he looks at them, and he sees that Paul Revere is on them. And he goes, oh, I see, Paul signed these. He goes, well, and he kind of softened up, and he signed all three of them when he saw that Paul was on them. And one of the reasons why I think that softened him up is because that was right around the time that Paul was dying. I think Paul was still with us at the time, but he was gone within months of that. And I think Mark probably saw that and knew that, Paul wasn't well. And I think, that melted his heart a bit, and he signed all my records for me. So, I'm grateful for that. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mike Fornatel, by the way. Mike Fornatel didn't make this happen, but, Mike's a good guy. He deserves a thank you just for being Mike, all right? Yeah, so that's that, and now, so I have my Paul and Mark Lindsay signed Raiders albums. Would be nice to get Fang on there, but I don't really foresee a time when that's going to happen, but who knows, anything's possible. Okay, so next up is the Runaways, Queens of Noise. Yeah, you see, I have Joan, I have Cherie, and I have Lita. I never was able to get Sandy. I'm not going to get Sandy at this point. Pretty sure I'm probably not going to get Jackie Fox. Because Jackie's a lawyer. She's not in the entertainment. She doesn't play. She doesn't do shows. She's a lawyer. She has plenty of money, so she's not going to be doing, autograph signing at Chiller or anything like that. So when am I going to get a chance to get Jackie? But I have Joan, Cherie, and Lita. Now, As you might imagine, I did not get all three of these at the same time. I didn't happen to run into Joan, Lita, and Cherie all together at the same time. I did get these on three separate occasions. Now, Joan was the first one that I got. This would have been in the early 2000s, maybe around 2001 or 2002. This would have been the period when Joan had the really short, bleached kind of crew cut. And she was playing fairs, like Paul Revere. She was playing fairs, and I remember I went with a friend of mine, and she brought her Runaways first album, and I brought this album, and we went to see her at the fair. And and she, by the way, killed, Joan Jett, even at the fair, she played that fair like it was fucking Madison Square Garden, and she annihilated. Amazing show. Afterward, we went around the back, because you could kind of see where her trailer, like she had a trailer back there, and you could see where she was staying. And we went around, and there was like a chain link fence. And so we all went back there. You know, a bunch of the crowd went, like there was a whole crowd of people back there. You've seen all the shots of, like, you know, Kiss and people in the 70s, you know, with the crowd of autograph seekers on one side of the chain link fence, you know, and the big star on the other side of the chain link fence. It was just like that. So we go around there and we wait and wait, and basically, after the show's over, Joan is inside her little trailer, wanting to kick back, wanting to wipe off the sweat, have a drink, and relax. But somebody kind of came out, a representative, who said she's going to come out, give her some time, you know, she needs to relax a little bit. So we just kind of like waited it out. And when she decided she felt like she had a little rest and a little something to drink, she came out. And she, you know, she was on the opposite side of the chain link fence, but she was there saying hi to everybody, grabbing, you know, we were handing stuff over to her, and she was signing stuff and talking to people and stuff. It was really, really cool. So that's when she signed my Joan Jett. She wrote, "Love, Joan Jett." And the reason why I'm telling you that she wrote "Love, Joan Jett" is because it's part of the story as the story goes along. So, I believe, yes, the second one I got was Cherie. Now, there's a thing in New Jersey called Chiller. Anybody in New York or in New Jersey knows what Chiller is. You know what I'm talking about. Well, if you're not from New York or New Jersey, Chiller Theater is an event that they have every year, usually around Halloween. Sometimes they have it in the middle of the year around April too. But for years and years and decades, they've had it around Halloween. It's almost like a Comic-Con type of event, but it's really more about horror films and bands and TV shows. It's not really about comics. It's about, it's about movies and TV shows and music related stuff. So you'll have, people like, Wally and the Beaver will be there, and you can meet them, and you pay X amount of dollars, and they sign your stuff and take pictures with you, or, whatever, Lou Ferrigno, of course, or bands, different bands, like, whoever, like the Gene Cornish from the Rascals or something, that kind of thing. Well, there was one Chiller one year where Cherie was there, and I went, boom. There were a few other people there that I wanted to go and see and meet, but I definitely wanted to go get Cherie on this record. So, yeah, I mean, there really isn't a major story to it, except for that there are different rooms where people are sitting. There'll be a room where, like, Mickey Dolenz and Peter Tork are, and then there's another room that's for, like, kind of like the lower tier people, like Cherie and, like, somebody from the Dead Boys or something. And, so, yeah, I mean, I went into that room, and Cherie was just sitting there by herself at the table. There was nobody queued up. She was just kind of sitting there, drinking a Tab Cola or something, and I went up and was like, "Oh, hey, Cherie," she gave her my record. She signed it, and she says to me, she goes, "Your name's John, right?" I'm like, "John? What are you talking about?" No, my name's Paul." And she goes, "Oh," and she points at Joan's autograph. She thought Joan wrote Joan Jett. But no, it says Love. So yeah, she just like it, and it does look like it says John, doesn't it? Yeah. So, but no, sorry, Cherie, I am Paul. But the funny thing about that is that she asked my name, but she didn't write my name on the record. She just wrote "With Love, Cherie." But anyway, so now at this point, I have these two autographs, and then a couple years later, Lita Ford has put out her autobiography, right? You guys may recall, what's it called? Living Like a Runaway or whatever. And she was doing an event here in Brooklyn at St. Vitus, which is a heavy metal club, basically. And they had an event there where she was set up on the stage at this club, and everybody, she did like a Q&A and everything, but then you queue up and you go up to the stage to her table, and she signed your book. Well, of course, I showed up there, and I bought a book, but I brought this record. And, I was pretty far back in line. There were, I was in the latter half of the line that was waiting, but I could see that there were people at the front of the line who had records, who were, getting their books signed, but they would actually put a record on the table in front of her, and she signed it. I saw at least 3 or 4 people do that and did it without, got off without a hitch. Well, at some point, her handler decided to put the kibosh on it, which was right before I got there. But when I got up there and I'm talking to Lita, and I kind of pulled out the record and slipped it in front of her, and her handler went, "No, she's only signing books." I'm thinking, fuck, will you just let those 5 people get their records signed? Okay. So I got my book signed, and I went back down off the stage, and I waited until the whole thing was over. The whole line had gotten through, and she was done, and she got up from her table, and she gets up, and she comes off stage, and when she's by herself, and I made a beeline for her. "Hi, Lita, would you sign my record?" And her eyes got big, and she looked like she was caught, and she looked back to her handler, like she was caught in a situation where she wasn't going to tell me no. She's like, "Where's the person that says no?" Well, the person who says no wasn't there. It was just her by herself. She goes, "Okay." She takes the pen, and she goes, "But keep walking," because she was making a beeline for her car, trying to get out of this place and go straight to her car. She's like, "I'm going to sign this, but keep moving." So we're walking very briskly to the door to get out while she signed this record, which is why it's such a really terrible autograph. Yeah, it's a really awful, terrible autograph, but I got it. But it's kind of, and I thought, what a win. I got her to sign the record anyway, right? Well, not quite a win, because then a couple years later, she was doing like some Kiss, like one of those Kiss events, like like a Kiss-related Comic-Con kind of thing. I forget what you call them. I'm having a brain fart. You know what I'm, Kiss Fest or whatever. And Ace Frehley was there doing his 1978 solo album live in its entirety, and Lita was there, she had her own table, and she was signing shit. If only I could have known, I would have just happily gone to that and paid for her to sign it at this thing to have gotten a better autograph. But, whatever. What are you going to do? Okay, so the next album I'm going to discuss is, honestly, one of the greatest albums ever made. Yeah, and I really feel so lucky to have this signed by every living member of the band. Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies. Yes, and this is a legit 1968 date copy. Okay, now a friend of mine got this for me 20 years ago for Christmas. She bought it on eBay, and it was a promo copy that had a white promo strip across the bottom. She painstakingly, shout out to Erica, I don't know if you're watching, Erica, painstakingly steamed off, or I don't know if she steamed off, she somehow painstakingly got that white promo strip off this cover without destroying it. I mean, there's a very slight rip down here, like something that you can't even find, basically. She somehow very, very, very slowly and very methodically and very masterfully got that sticker off and gave me this record. Now, a couple of years later, Colin Blunston and Rod Argent were reunited and were doing shows. And they came into town, and they were playing a small club. They were playing a club that the band I was in played all the time. And they were doing 2 shows that night. It was like they were doing 2 shows that night, and I bought tickets for the first show and brought my Odyssey and Oracle along. And this was when they first started doing it again. Like, they hadn't started calling it the Zombies again. It was really just Colin Blunston and Rod Argent. It was billed as such. Went to the show, watched the first set. That's the one I had paid for, right? And they opened up with Andorra from Colin Blunston's solo album from I think the second one, right? Anyway, and then they went from Andorra right into This Will Be Our Year, and I thought I would never have thought I would see this in a million years. Like, I wept, I fucking wept. And then at the end of the set, they kind of got off stage and went back into there's a little green room in this club, and I started talking to the sound guy because I knew him because my band played there all the time. So I'm sitting here shooting the shit with the sound guy, and he said, "Oh, so you had tickets for the first show?" He goes, "Stay right here, stick around, watch the other show." Like, he let me stay to see the second show, which I hadn't paid for. He just kind of like had me stay with him at the sound booth until everybody was let in for the second show, and then he let me go. So I watched the show a second time, and after the second show, Rod and Colin came out. They came out of the green room and met everybody, and so I had them sign this Odyssey and Oracle. And I'll show photos here. There's a couple of photos. There's one of me with Colin and with Rod. And as you can see here, Rod, when you speak to Rod Argent, he looks you dead in the eye and he really listens. Fast forward to 2015, they do a tour where they're playing Odyssey and Oracle in its entirety with the original band, with Chris White and Hugh Grundy. And they're over here in Manhattan, and they're playing at the New York Society for Ethical Culture. It's this really amazing room with like these old school wooden benches. It's this beautiful place I'd never been to before, and it's over at Central Park West, just like a few blocks up from the Dakota. And it wasn't a very expensive show. I bought like the full treatment, ticket where you can, with the meet and greet beforehand, and you get to watch the sound check and everything. And I brought my Odyssey and Oracle, and we waited in line. We watched the sound check and everything, and then we all had to queue up to meet the zombies. But what we were queuing up to meet them and get our photo. But I brought this record with me, and when I showed up to get my photo, here's the photo right here. Here I am with the zombies, with the original fucking zombies. Now, I kind of chatted with them for a second and pulled out my record. And they had to kind of shoo me off because they didn't have enough. They only had time to take photos, say hi for a second, and get you going. And they kind of basically had to move you through so they wouldn't sign the record. But part of the swag you got for purchasing this whole meet and greet thing was they gave you a fully signed new reissue of Odyssey and Oracle. So I did actually have all four of them on this reissue, which I'd gotten with the whole meet and greet package, right? But I still wanted Hugh and Chris on the original album. So we watched the show, and they do two sets. They do one set with the current touring band, where they do kind of all the general stuff, newer songs, and She's Not There, and all that kind of stuff, and, What More Can I Do, and all that kind of shit. And then they do, the second set is Odyssey and Oracle in its entirety with the original band, and it was absolutely stunning. When Chris White comes in to sing the second verse on Brief Candles, because the first verse is Colin and then the second verse is Chris, and when he comes in, you could hear a pin drop in that place. Everybody just shut up and listened, and the minute the verse is over, the entire crowd erupts. It was just this joyous kind of emotional moment for like everybody there, It was fucking magic. And Hugh Grundy, very simple drummer, very distinct. It is so when he is on the drums, it's him. It is different. With Chris and Hugh playing with them, it sounds like the Zombies. With their regular touring incarnation, it just sounds like Colin and Rod with a bunch of other guys. I love those guys, but it's different. With Hugh and Chris there, it's like, wow, this sounds like them. That sounds like Hugh on the drums. That sounds like the record. Amazing show. Afterwards, waited outside the door for those guys to come out, and it was late at night. It was dark, and there were a bunch of people out there, but I waited them out. And it was cold and the whole thing, but they did come out, and they signed shit for everybody waiting outside too. And I was able to get, well, actually, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I was able to get Hugh inside the venue when they were done, and Hugh was walking away to go backstage. I was like, Hugh! And he turns around and walks over to me, and I asked him to sign the record, and he signed it for me. But then when I waited outside to get Chris, which I was finally able to manage to do. Yeah, as you see here, some photos here. You can see Chris and there's Hugh signing stuff for the adoring fans there, and here's Colin signing stuff. I didn't bother Colin and Rod outside the venue because I really just wanted to get, I already had their autographs on the records. I really just needed Chris and Hugh on my Odyssey and Oracle, and fortunately they were cool about it. Okay, so up next, one of my favorite albums of all time. Yeah. And, Paul Williams' Someday Man. Yes, I have Paul Williams' Someday Man signed from Paul to Paul. Right? Now, I got this autograph in. Let me look at the date here in my notes. In October of 2006. Okay, now I used to have. I had a friend who used to be in a Jim Henson cover band called the Dead Hensons. Okay, same friend who got me the Odyssey and Oracle record. In fact, now. She was in a band that did covers of Jim Henson related music. Stuff from Sesame Street, stuff from Muppet Show, whatever. And they were called the Dead Hensons. Now, they were playing around San Francisco for a few years, and it got to the point where they were actually in contact with Henson's son, who loved the idea, was not at all offended by the name, like he got the humor in it. And then they also ended up being in contact with Paul Williams himself. Well, fast forward to October 2006, and Paul Williams is playing a show in San Francisco at this nightclub or whatever. And it was during the time, you may know the documentary, Paul Williams is Still Alive. Well, it was while that was being filmed. Now, if you've seen the documentary, you're going to know what I'm talking about. There's a scene where he's playing a nightclub in San Francisco where Paul Williams, he's being kind of bitchy and trying to thwart and undermine the documentary guy, and has the club turn the lights down so he can't film him. It was that show. So we went to the show to see it, and she had been in contact with Paul Williams, so she kind of was basically had it figured out that we could probably meet him afterward. Sure enough, so we watched the show. And afterwards, we kind of went into this lobby area, and he came out, and he met us. So she got her Holy Mackerel album signed, actually, and I got, you kidding me? Fucking Someday Man. Like, one of my, not only my favorite Paul Williams album, related, yes, more than Phantom of the Paradise, anything. It's all about Someday Man. And, yeah, I mean, this is one of my prized possessions. And yeah, I mean, he was really cool. He was really nice. I gave him a CD, one of my CDs of my album, which, thinking back, I don't even know why I did that. Like, what was he going to do? Like, get me signed to some, I don't know, whatever. But I gave him a CD, and he signed my Someday Man, and we took a picture. Here, look, here's a picture. Okay, yeah, so here I am with Paul Williams. Now, I mean, everybody knows Paul Williams is not a tall guy. Well, you know what? Neither am I. I'm only 5'6", and look at how tall I am next to him. It's crazy. Oh, yeah, I also forgot to mention that we actually spoke to the guy who was making the documentary that night. Like, we met him that night, too, and he actually took us around the corner with his camera to this pizza, to pizza, where a pizza slice place was, and we sat in there with pizza slices, and he interviewed us for the documentary. He didn't use any of it. I mean, I watched the documentary, like, waiting to see me talking about Paul Williams. Yeah, he cut all that stuff out. But he did actually shoot interview segments with us for the documentary. Where is that stuff? Hey, release the DVD or the Blu-ray with extras and put our stuff in there, will you? Come on. Okay, so the last one I'm going to be talking about for this episode, the Shags. The Shags with Philosophy of the World. Yes, I have an autographed Philosophy of the World. Now, how does one meet the Shags and get their autograph, right? That's not possible. You can't do... Yes, well, the reason why it was possible is because of my friend Jesse Krakow. Shout out to Jesse Krakow. Mad scientist. Insane motherfucker. Always has the craziest ideas that he somehow makes a reality. Well, about 10 or so years ago, he had this idea to, like, he tracked down the Wiggins sisters and just, like, called them and started basically befriended them over the phone and sold them on this idea. He wanted to do a tribute show. He did it here in Brooklyn at a place called the Bell House. And he got a band together that learned all the songs exactly as they sound on the record. He got these incredible A-list in terms of talent, musicians, some of the best musicians I've ever met in my fucking life, people that I know here in New York, who learned that stuff note for note and played it exactly the way it sounds on that record. These people had charts in front of them, playing these fucked up fucking tracks and they sounded just as fucked up as they do on the record. And they had a revolving door of vocalists coming up to do the songs, one of whom was Crystal Durant from our Singles of the Year series. Okay, she sang. I didn't sing in that show, but I sure as hell attended the show. And afterwards, they were literally just sitting over on the side, sitting on chairs, and I went over and talked to them and had them sign the record. Now, Helen is no longer with us, and she was gone at that time too. And I don't remember if it was Betty or if it was Dot who was signing and said, "Is it okay if I write Helen's name on here too?" And I thought, well, sure, okay. So Helen's name is on here, but she didn't write it. Either Dot or Betty, I don't remember which. But Rachel, who is the fourth sister, who was on the second album, she signed it as well because she was there. Now, so that's all great and dandy. This really cool show, watching people insanely cover Shags tracks. The Shags coming up on stage and greeting everybody. The Shags being there to meet you and sign your damn record, right? Well, the next day, at Jesse's apartment in Greenpoint here in Brooklyn, he had a brunch in his apartment. A bunch of friends came over and the Shags were there. Yeah, so we basically got to hang out and have a brunch at Jesse's house with the fucking Shags. Yeah, here's a photo right here. This is me with the Shags at Jesse's house, at Jesse's apartment. Who would ever think that would ever happen? This is absolutely impossible. Yeah, it happened. I mean, this is an album that there was a record store that I used to frequent in the 80s called Absolutely St. John's. And St. John turned my friends and I, we're like 13 years old, it's 1983, he turned us onto this record. So this is record, of course, to anybody who knows it, is stuff of legends. And, it's just like, but there's just so much mystery behind it. Who would ever think that they would actually see the Shags in the flesh? Well, it happened. And not long after that, Jesse actually convinced Dot to record new music, and they played live shows with Dot singing, doing new songs, doing songs from the Shags albums. It was absolutely insane. I don't know, basically only Jesse could have pulled this off. But yeah, there you go. So that's that. I mean, the Shags. What the fuck more do you want, right? All right. So that's the end of my first installment of the autographed LPs series. I don't know when I'm going to do the second one. Hopefully soon. I do have more records that I can show and discuss. And hopefully you found it fun or entertaining or amusing or stupid or whatever. But anyway, thank you everybody who's watching the videos, and thank you for the subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you do subscribe, click the little bell for notifications and comment and like and all that kind of stuff. And stick around for this Thursday. Crystal Durant and Tommy Von Voigt are going to be back because we're going to be counting down our top favorite singles of 1971. Yeah. And on through the 70s and on through the 80s and even through the 90s. So come back for that. Anyway, well, I will see you guys soon.